people for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesty above the fruited plains. America, America, God shed His grace on thee, and from thy good with brotherhood, from sea to shining sea.
What up, what up? Welcome to you, or excuse me. Now I'm back. Welcome to our second in a series of learning adventures in AP Government, and this time we're going to be wrapping up tactics of interest groups. I know that we haven't gone through every single one of those tactics, but I want to comment ever so briefly on the tactics that they use, and probably we'll be going over a little bit with lobbying as well. Again, when we talk about interest groups, we're talking about factions. People coming together with a similar interest in an attempt to influence public policy. So that is the key. They want to influence public policy or laws. Although public policy extends past laws into other areas such as receiving money from the government. But that is the ultimate goal, influence public policy, and they have many different tactics that they use. If you recall, we talked about the use of mass media, commercials, flyers, pamphlets. You can go online and virtually type in any particular interest group, whether it be the NRA, and type in advertisement onto YouTube, and you can find lots of different advertisements. And certainly with the advent of the internet and technologies as such, we've had an increase in those technologies. Now litigation is taken into the courts, and this time I'm going to turn off part of the lights for both of them. And it's very odd being this dark. Oh, there's Basil. And go to a website as we talk about this. SCOTUS blog, if you have not found this website, is a fantastic website that talks about different court cases. Some of these are, I take that back, almost all of them have interest groups that care about the particular court case at hand. This case here is Alonis versus United States. It is a court case that does not deal directly with an interest group. It deals with an individual who posted very inflammatory post on the Facebook in regards to his ex-girlfriend. It was either ex-wife, ex-girlfriend. And she contacted the authorities, and eventually the FBI arrested him under a federal statute as an individual who was threatening over the internet. Of course, the internet crosses state lines, therefore it becomes a federal jurisdiction or a federal issue. So Alonis lost and is facing several years in federal prison, and so he took it to the courts. He is arguing a First Amendment right of freedom of speech. And this case brief is really, really interesting. So, in these briefs, what you're going to see, and this is quite long, it's probably about 50 pages long, you're going to see a variety of laws and court cases referenced in the particular brief. But what's unique about this brief is I think at some point, well, somewhere in here, you're going to see a discussion about Eminem, rap music, and some of the amicus briefs allude to that as well, in comparing his case to a rapper just singing rap songs about killing people, putting a cap in your bleep. And so he's saying it's freedom of speech. He did not mean that he was going to commit these acts against his ex-girlfriend, and therefore it was protected speech. Now the court needs to determine whether or not he has crossed the line, and they will do so. But what you'll see in these particular cases, and especially with this one, is you have amicus briefs filed by a variety of different interest groups. Sometimes could be professionals, legal professionals, or law professors that will file a brief, but Student Press Law Center, interest group. Center for Individual Rights, interest group. People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, PETA, interest group. What's unique about the PETA amicus curiae brief is not only is PETA here, but you have an alliance with other groups. First names, not quite sure who these people are. Citizens for a Pro-Life Society, Pro-Life Action League, Missionaries to the Preborn, Defend Life, Survivors, Pro-Life Action Ministries. What's interesting about this is those are as conservative a group, I would imagine, that you will find. They are pro-life, probably very religious. And then you have PETA, which is one of the most liberal interest groups in the United States. So they come together, and what this is called, vocab term, is coalition building. They may not hang out on the weekends, but they have the same goal, and that is to protect free speech. Both groups, PETA and the opposite end of the political spectrum, with pro-life groups, have a vested interest in the court ruling for them so that they can continue to exercise their First Amendment rights. I find this fascinating. I just kind of stumbled across it. This is an amicus brief with as liberal and as conservative a side coming together to fight and argue that Elonis has freedom of speech rights on the internet. The ramifications of this case are significant because it can further define how you can be punished for posting online. So this is a huge, huge case. Will be argued December 1st, probably not decided until June, unfortunately. So those are amicus briefs. And litigation is using the courts. When minority interests, not necessarily racial minorities, when minority interests decided they needed to make public policy successes when they were in the minority view, this is where we go. I could go to another a court case, which is Schneider v. Phelps. Schneider v. Phelps dealt with the minority interests as minority as it can get in regards to a small group of people. And Westboro Baptist Church wanted to protest funerals, and what they did is they stood outside with despicable signs. An individual serviceman's family whose their son's funeral was picketed, sued Westboro Baptist Church and won tens of thousands of dollars, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so Westboro Baptist Church took it to the courts arguing First Amendment rights. There are a ton of amicus briefs in this particular case as well. But the litigation part here is the idea that individual groups, in this case it's a small church, but individual groups are using the courts for protection. Remember, the Bill of Rights protects minority interests, not racial, but minority interests, the few. So litigation is a pretty powerful way of trying to affect public policy. Campaign contributions we'll go over in a separate video on political action committees. Endorsement of candidates. Whether it be in a newspaper, whether it be in an email blast to membership of the particular interest group, the interest groups tend to endorse candidates. And if you went to the NRA's website, they probably have a list of candidates across the country that they support. And same thing with these pro-life interest groups. Emily's list, which is pro-choice. I could go on and on. There's an interest group called Numbers USA that strictly cares, single issue, strictly cares about the immigration issue. And they have what we have is called a report card. And if we went to that website, we would see that they have given hypothetical grades, A+, D-, to the candidates based on how they are voting on immigration. And their interest group is very strict immigration standards, very few people being able to immigrate into our country. So if a member of Congress or a member of the Senate vote in a way that does not align with that interest group, they're going to get the low grade. I think Mike Quigley has a D-, or maybe it's an F-. So they're hypothetical. I mean, members of Congress don't go on Power Congress and look at their grade from Numbers USA, but for individuals who are a member of that interest group, they probably pay attention when voting according to these hypothetical grades, if you will. Lobbying. Lobbying is probably one of the biggest things that interest groups do outside of election time with what we have right now, whether it be midterm or a general election. Lobbying is the ability to literally go into the lobby of Congress and try to convince members of Congress to support a piece of legislation, to pass a bill that would give appropriations or money. It could be a variety of things. Lobbyists also go and lobby the bureaucratic agencies in the executive branch. And all of these things are crucial for interest groups to get their policy objectives met. And again, this idea, and I'll put it on the board, pluralism. The idea that there are many different interest groups fighting for policy objectives. Pluralism is inherent in the interest groups across the country, kind of fighting, whether it be at the state level or the national level, to have influence. There are a variety of ways in which they can get influence, which we previously mentioned. But lobbyists give information to members of Congress, whether it be information about a particular poll or a particular issue. They provide the actual nuts and bolts of the legislation, the words of legislation, in the hopes that the member of Congress will go ahead and adopt their particular version, whatever the public policy area is. And they also testify at hearings, which we'll get more into Unit 4. Lobbyists have to be registered with Congress. Now, does that necessarily mean that every lobbyist does? No. So they do have to be registered, and there is some transparency there in regards to the things that they do. But lobbyists, one of the arguments is they link individuals to the political process. Interest groups represent tens of thousands, maybe millions of American citizens who want to be able to influence public policy, and lobbyists are simply that link between the government and these interest groups. They could make a tremendous amount of money as lobbyists, especially if they're successful in what they do. Certainly First Amendment protections for lobbyists. Lobbyists and interest groups have First Amendment protections to be able to petition the government by going to Congress and asking them to pass a law or to oppose a piece of legislation that is essentially petitioning. You can also use the First Amendment, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, etc. So there is a lot of argument that interest groups, lobbyists put forth or continue the political process in a democracy by letting individual citizens give their money, volunteer their time to a particular interest group, and we will wrap it up at that because I'm sure somebody is going to come to my door now that the day is end. Next one up, political action committees. We'll see you soon. Peace.